Nintendo has stolen game ideas, been sued countless times, and has even been found guilty of some pretty shady business practices. So today we're gonna go over 30 things Nintendo doesn't want you to know about. All the way back in the late 60s, Nintendo was actually sued for ripping off Legos. They released their own version called NMB blocks, which honestly barely even sold. It didn't matter though, because Lego got pissed and immediately took Nintendo to court. And after a short legal battle, Nintendo was found innocent even though they basically admitted to copying Lego. After all of that, the product still didn't take off, so they just closed the company in 1970.
And that wasn't even the first time Nintendo ripped something off, as even one of the most iconic faces of the brand was created out of pure saltiness. They initially wanted to make a game with Popeye, Bluto, and Olive Oil, but when they couldn't secure the rights, they just created their own version with Mario, Donkey Kong, and Pauline.
But moving over to an entirely different controversy, did you know Nintendo once wanted to be involved in gambling? Back in the 90s, they believed that Nintendo had the capability to allow people to play the lottery from home. They even did a trial run of this where they let people pick lottery numbers for $10 a month. Unfortunately, in the end, they scrapped the idea though because they were way too worried kids would try to gamble.
But something even more mind-blowing is this secret about Donkey Kong. Obviously, he's a gorilla with donkey in his name, but his movements didn't come from either animal. When the developers studied Gorilla's movements, they stated that they were too slow and unsuitable for Donkey Kong, so instead his movements got loosely animated on a horse's gallop. My man is the ultimate crossbreed Nintendo character.
And while Donkey Kong has some weird origins, Nintendo was actually almost sued over his design. In 1982, the president of Universal learned that Donkey Kong made over $180 million. Obviously, anyone would try to jump at that kind of money, so Universal filed a lawsuit claiming DK's design was stolen from King Kong. And after a long drawn-out court battle, a judge ruled in the favor of Nintendo and the case was eventually thrown out.
Moving into some darker territory, Nintendo actually tried to cover up a secret that caused the entire company to change. They used to offer on-the-phone support to players who needed help in-game. However, they had to severely alter the way they ran the calls by limiting them to 7 minutes max, since more people were using it as a therapy hotline rather than its original intended purpose.
But something that a lot of people are shocked to learn about is the strictness Nintendo has for their lead game designer. Miyamoto created Mario, Zelda, and countless other franchises, so as you can imagine, he's a pretty valuable guy. Although he is so valuable, Nintendo literally won't let him ride his own bike to work. He's actually forced to take a company car for safety and security reasons, which is kind of understandable, but let me know what you guys think about it.
By now we all know Nintendo has made some shameless copies, but this copy could have caused problems across the entire world if it was passed. The Duck Hunt gun we know in the US looks playful, however Japan's model looked way too similar to an actual revolver. The US forced Nintendo to redesign the gun completely since they thought it would be used in real-life robberies.
And an even darker Nintendo secret can be found years ago over in a European country. In Germany, there was a Nintendo Power magazine, and they took some crazy artistic liberties with Kirby. We all know him as pretty innocent, but in this magazine, he was depicted as a slimy detective. But the absolute worst part was the fact that he smoked cigarettes, looked at dirty magazines, and even said curse words.
And while Kirby was way different in other countries, did you know Mario's entire character was once completely different? His name was initially Jumpman in Donkey Kong Jr., and he was given a twirled mustache, evil characteristics, and was in fact the enemy. In the game, he traps DK in a cage, with his son tasked to come save him from Mario. Maybe Mario deserves some of that karma with Bowser.
And while we're on the topic of OG Mario, some of his original advertisement artwork actually portrayed him as balding. In Donkey Kong ads from the early 80s, you could see Mario hanging out with the ladies, and under his cap was a nice shiny head.
And none of this would even exist without some of their earliest inventions, like their famous Inappropriate playing cards. Yeah, in 1889, the founder of Nintendo hand-painted cards, which became the most popular playing card in Japan. However, these ended up getting banned since they promoted gambling, which forced Nintendo to try other stuff before thankfully finding gaming.
And while that is a pretty badass origin story, it's still not as insane as how the sprite for Luigi in Super Mario was created. Nintendo didn't have a lot of space on those old cartridges, so instead of creating a new character from scratch, they just smashed together some already made assets. Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing, but Luigi is just Mario blended together with a Koopa.
But not all origin stories are as interesting. Some are more dirty. When Mario Strikers was first being teased, they had made a poster that got straight up rejected because of its promotion. The image showed 2 soccer balls dangling from a net with the slogan saying, "You're going to need a pair." First Inappropriate cards, then this? And it gets even worse with this next spot.
The original version of Super Mario Kart actually featured Bowser and Peach getting drunk after winning. After the race, you can see Peach chugging champagne while her face blushes, and Bowser can be found just pouring the bubbles all over himself. Unfortunately, the US wasn't a fan of this and forced Nintendo to change it to throwing alcohol in the air instead.
Nintendo may have strayed away from drinking in Mario games, but almost didn't stray away from having guns. In the early documents of the game, rocket packs and beam gun power-ups were meant to be in the game. Unfortunately, they were removed because the developers thought it would make it too easy, so instead they gave us fire and ice flowers.
And that's not the only idea to get scrapped, because Bowser originally started out as an ox. In the original sketches, Miyamoto actually designed him to be an ox, but designer Tezuka said he looked way more like a turtle. This led to the two redesigning him, and luckily they settled on the iconic fire-breathing turtle.
While Nintendo may have success now, it wasn't always like this. As a matter of fact, Nintendo of America's warehouse struggled to pay rent back in 1981. The landlord Mario Segali actually didn't kick them out for not paying, so Nintendo decided to name Mario after this man. A little rent for a lifetime of notoriety? I'd take it.
And sure, the origin of Mario's name is interesting, but it's not the only thing to be inspired by real life. Miyamoto actually stated that chain chomps were completely inspired by a childhood memory. There was this dog in his neighborhood that always tried to attack him, but was stopped just short by a chain. This memory would actually turn into chain chomps, and that's even the reason why they bark.
And while you've seen chain chomps in Super Mario 64, you'll laugh at the beta version, which had these placeholder voice lines before Charles Martinet recorded. They sounded ridiculous. Just take a listen.
Woo! Ha! Yeah! No! Oh! Woo! Something else that was completely scrapped was a gaming smartphone. Nintendo once wanted to create an all-in-one mobile gaming device that had the same capabilities as an Android. This idea was over a decade ago though, and they decided to scrap it since phones are basically mini computers now.
While they never went through with the smartphone, they always made sure that players felt appreciated. If you own a NintendoSwitch Pro controller, there's a secret message that's been hiding for years that you can see right now. If you hold on the right thumbstick, a tiny message will light up inside saying thanks to all the game fans. But there's even a secret dating back to their oldest console.
Japan's version of the NES was a console named the Famicom Disk System. What's crazy is that it had its own mascot that wasn't Mario. The Famicom had this little yellow disc named Diskun as its mascot, and he was actually pretty cute. Unfortunately, he's not too popular nowadays, but you can still catch a glimpse of him as a trophy in Super Smash Bros. Melee.
That isn't the only gem hidden in the past. Mario Kart 64 has the secret song that you can only get by letting the end of the race loop for 64 times. And after waiting for almost an hour, this plays.
But not all Nintendo secrets are completely harmless. Back in the 90s, when people rented a lot of Nintendo games, some games like Battletoads were made specifically difficult so that you couldn't beat them in a single rental period. This would often make people go out and buy the full game just if they wanted to finish it. But I will say, in Nintendo's defense, cartridges were extremely small back then, so making games hard was also good for replayability.
And even though that secret kept us playing for hours, I suppose it's what contributed to their success, almost landing Mario an attraction at Disney. Yeah, Nintendo was once in the works with Disney to create a theme park ride based on the Super Mario Bros. Movie. However, once it flopped, they dropped them. Essentially, Nintendo got broken up with for not having enough clout. But they have their own dedicated theme park now, so I think they're doing alright.
Bringing it back to an OG secret, there's this little trick I learned recently about Super Mario Bros. That blew my mind. The game has a finite amount of lives, and once they're gone, you have to go all the way back to World 1, Level 1. But apparently, the instruction manual had a cheat to make this way less painful. If you hold A and then press start, this would take you right back to the top of the world instead of starting all over again. Seriously, out of everything on this list, I actually wish I knew this one as a kid.
And another thing I wanted to know was if Mario had a last name. Well, with both Mario and Luigi being titled the Mario Bros, their last name would technically be Mario. So Luigi Mario and Mario Mario is a thing, and Miyamoto even confirmed this in 2015.
I don't think I'll ever unhear Mario Mario, especially the way that Khan says it, but there's this little detail in Super Mario that you'll never unsee. The clouds in the sky are literally just the bushes recolored from green to white. I don't know how I never noticed this, but the fact that Nintendo sold these next games is just insane.
We've seen inappropriate playing cards, attempts at gambling, and even dirty promotions, but it was once way worse. Back in the 80s, some games slipped through the cracks that were straight up rated M. There was Bubble Bath Babes, Peekaboo Poker, and Hot Slots, which was so dirty. That's it for the 30 things Nintendo doesn't want you to know. Subscribe if you're new around here. I'm Khan.
And I'm Sammy. Thank you guys for watching.